Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Cvijetan. I am an osteopathic manual practitioner from Oakville, Ontario. I run Level Osteopathy, and I'm here today with Prosper on the online Prosperity Show. And if you're tuning in, you can expect a little bit of wit and sarcasm, but more importantly, an important aspect on how your body holistically heals itself and move forward.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place to discover exclusive insights from industry leaders who are solving real-world problems. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into the world of holistic healing with a twist of sarcasm. Now, Stefan, how are you doing, my man?
Hi, Prosper. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today. And yes, a hint of sarcasm seems to be the general direction of my life and my practice.
Absolutely. See, when I saw that, I was like, wow. Okay, so this guy is, practicing this, methodology in medicine, osteopath, and sarcasm. You would never expect that from somebody who is actually manipulating your bones, right? So there you go. I can't wait to learn what it is that you do and how you are helping people. Now, for those that are meeting Stefan for the very first time, Stefan is the founder of Level Osteopathy in Oakville, Ontario. Now, Stefan isn't your typical osteopath. He's actually, like he has already established, a self-proclaimed fluent speaker of sarcasm and a lifelong collector of Pokemon cards. But beyond the humor and the cards, there lies a dedicated professional who has actually transformed countless lives through his unique approach and help in his osteopathic practice there. Now, Stefan's journey began with the fascination of the works of Dr. Andrew Taylor Still, and that has led him to pursue a master's in osteopathic manipulative sciences. And today he combines this expertise with kinesiology, sports nutrition, and also strength conditioning to provide personalized care that actually addresses not just symptoms, but the actual root cause of pain and dysfunction. And obviously, in this episode, we're going to be exploring Stefan's path from academia to entrepreneurship and also discuss some of the misconceptions surrounding osteopathy and also uncover invisible lessons that has shaped his practice, his journey, and what he now offers to the public. So whether you're battling chronic pain or you're just simply curious about holistic health, stay tuned because you won't want to miss this enlightening conversation. Now, Stefan, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. Your journey actually started with, you coming across the work of Dr. Still. What is it that captivated you about his journey?
And it's kind of an interesting journey that Dr. Andrew Taylor Still had himself. So my journey started in my undergrad, just following along all my friends. You don't know where to go to school afterward you finish high school. So I trekked through into kinesiology because that was the popular program at the time. And I was the only one to survive the program for some reason, or maybe my own mother just made sure that I didn't quit once I started because it costs a pretty penny to go to school. And in that process of kinesiology, you learn a lot of sciences. So not only are you touching a little bit into nutrition and dietetics, you are touching into manual therapy, the human body, exercise science, and more. It would come around my second year in the program, where writing one of my first papers on cardiovascular health, because that's a unique interest that I have, I would actually reference an article from Andrew Taylor Still. So for those who don't know, Dr. Andrew Taylor Still was a bit of a pioneer doctor back in the mid and late 1800s. He was actually a medical surgeon who had served over the Civil War in the United States. And in his own journey of seeing how medicine was at the time, he started to approach a more holistic means of healthcare. He comes from a very spiritual background. He was very involved in politics as well. His mother was a very stern woman that took care of him. His father was a preacher that would practice the gospel and try and spread Christianity at this point in the States. So he has an interesting story. And so all of that pulls together in his own writings, which was some of the first articles, not only in medicine, but in osteopathy. So as a young kinesiology student, kinesiology is exercise science, and it always leads you into realms of physiotherapy, athletic therapy, chiropractic. Sometimes you go into medicine as well. But here I was reading the writings of this old quacky doctor with copper in his jaw because of the misuse of medicine at the time, realizing quintessentially that the body regulates itself, the body heals itself. And in his first article, he kind of breaks down his philosophy on where medicine should go and where care for the patient should go. And what captivated me is in one of his first writings, the very first paragraph, he's discussing how he worries down the road in the 20th century. He sees that the way medicine's progressing, it's actually going to lead the patient and the doctor to solely focus on symptomatic care. And with the introduction of drugs, which is needed and a necessary tool in today's world, he just had a fascination that it was going to pull us away from actually taking care of ourselves and put us in a system of where we're constantly just trying to cover up the system or mitigate symptoms rather than seeing how to help the body take care of itself. So sometimes the patient needs more care and life coaching. So that became my first steps into osteopathy, was using this as an article to defend my point, because that's what you do as a student. You just want to prove you're right. You never want to think you're wrong. As we get older, children in life humble us a bit and we realize we're wrong more often than we are right. But that was my first introduction to osteopathy. So much so that my own professor at the time, who was a mentor, said, you know what? I think this is a direction you need to go because it collects your current mindset in the field of healthcare. And now, many years later, and a push for my wife, I am an osteopath today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us up on this journey. But obviously, prior to this, you would have maybe been a young boy growing up there in Ontario or, wherever you grew up. Was osteopathy on the cards, or was it something that you just then came up, as by you learning all these intricacies, of and fascinations from what you were reading?
I think osteopathy was always in the cards in the background, but I wasn't fully aware of it. So in my area where I grew up, you don't hear of osteopaths whatsoever. It is a very foreign title, very foreign concept. Even when I was growing up, if I had come across an osteopath, they may have not actually called themselves as much. It was common to see chiropractic clinics or spinal clinics.
Right.
And they would just never refer to themselves as an osteopath because it was something less common to be heard of. In Ontario, osteopaths, we don't even carry the title of doctor. It's currently trademarked in the United States. So we call ourselves osteopathic manual therapists. So it really wasn't until in my more adolescent years that I would even come across osteopathy, even think of branching out into studies into osteopathy.
Absolutely. Now, I also noticed a bit of a similarity between you and Dr. Steele in the way that your mother's sort of moved you into this sort of practice. You did mention that your mom kept you going, because eventually you were the only kid in the kinesiology class because mom would have kept you going. And you also mentioned that Andrew had, his mom was also a bit of a stern mom who also was motivating him like that. Did you ever come across that parallel, or are you just noticing that now?
No, I did. And sometimes I don't give her enough credit where it's due. But I think that happens with all of us, right? We all need a little push in the right direction. And coming from immigrant parents, education was not an option. I had to become educated to kind of take opportunities here that they may not have. And so I think I took that to heart to such a great deal that I had to keep pursuing more and more education, and eventually led me down to osteopathy. Now, I think another parallel I would share with Dr. Andrew Taylor still is I think neither of our mothers wanted us to become osteopaths because nobody knew what it was necessarily. You know, mothers always want security for their children. So then to wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm going to pursue this field that nobody else has ever heard of in our area, and I'm going to try to be the best at it, can cause a little bit of concern, but we've made do since then.
Absolutely. And there's also another parallel which might seem a little bit obvious, but with a little bit of digging, maybe we'll come to this. You were the only student that survived the kinesiology class. And also during his time, Andrew was fighting the traditional 19th century limitations in medicine, where he was actually proposing things that were unheard of in that time, how bones which were out of place were actually hindering body fluids from flowing. And that then obviously got him to then be recognized as the father of osteopathy. So that too is, in my eyes, a nice similarity there. You know, we always take up after our heroes, don't we?
I appreciate that connection. Yeah, I guess we do in some way. You know, through any kind of trial, we become, I think, who we're meant to be. And I think Dr. Still had a lot of trials that led him to the field of osteopathy. And I guess my undergraduate program was one of them. Because when you're young, you're a little naive as well. And so you kind of jump into something without expectation. And I think to my peers, they found their own paths otherwise. And it's ironic because I entered kinesiology much as though Dr. Still entered medicine, not so much as an initial passion, but just because you were following the route. So Dr. Andrew Taylor Still's father, though he was a preacher, also practiced medicine. And so in that time, you just kind of followed along whoever your parents were guiding you into. And so I was pushed into education, and then I followed along my peers who all seemed to be going into this new program that was available to us at the time. Yet it was, I that kind of trifled through and made something of it. And so I guess I was just meant to follow along up until this point.
Absolutely. And you know what they say? I think it was it Einstein that said, if you love what you do, it never becomes work. I was just looking at your website, and it has this feel that when patients come to visit you at your practice, they feel like they're coming to visit a friend when they come to your clinic.
Constantly, and though I have to be mindful of that because ethically we have to keep a relationship as patient and practitioner. But I always say to my patients, and even when I used to network heavily to broadcast and showcase osteopathy to other businesses, I am found to be pretty personable. And I find that important for the patient because trust is such a giving thing that if entering my clinic, you are really entering my personal space, almost my second home. And like any home, I have to host you and make sure you're comfortable, make sure you're heard, and make sure you're secure. And I think that trails back and can be connected to all healthcare. And I think we need to make a better effort in that. And that's something that Andrew Taylor Still always did. He used to, invite patients into his home. He used to serve them dinner if he needed to. He would offer them a bed to stay, not in his own residence, but you have to extend yourself into the person who's trusting you with their body, with their health. And so I find having that personal approach, having that kind of home giving approach that some people have lost in the professional center, it makes it easier for me too. The patient then is more willing to discuss their health matters with me. They're more willing to make those life changes because they feel like it's coming from a person who cares rather than a system that's dictating it to them. So I appreciate that parallel. Thank you for checking out my website as well.
Absolutely. Now, you also did mention that when you were growing up, osteopathy was not common practice and not a lot of people sort of knew about that. Has that sort of shifted, or are you still in that sort of unknown gray area of, should I say, medicine?
One of the first things they teach you in the postgraduate program in osteopathy, and this is where I have to give credit to one of my other mentors, Mr. Robert Johnston, who really took an eye to me and helped kind of train me to who I am today. He says, the first thing I need to teach you is what osteopathy is as a definition, because people are going to be asking you for the rest of your life. And now every day I still answer, what is osteopathy? But we've definitely made a shift since I was a young lad. I also take part in the Ontario Association of Osteopaths here in Canada. And finally, we were reaching a point where more and more people recognize osteopathy. They don't necessarily understand what it is we do, but they start to visualize it as something that is common in health practice. So it's something they always want to add to their health team, at least now. It's something they've heard about. So, hey, I heard osteopathy was this good thing online. I wanted to try it out. So we've definitely made a shift into becoming more recognized in normal health practice, where back in the day, it was kind of simply a voodoo artist or somebody you never heard of. Hopefully they can help you. So to kind of break away from that narrative into something that is more commonplace has been a big help, not only in my career, but for all the osteopaths coming up after me. And we'll keep pushing for that recognition.
Oh, absolutely. And, speaking of recognition, you've also been recognized by your peers. You've won and received several awards, including, I think it was the Canadian Choice Awards in osteopathy. What do these accolades then mean for you and your team and what it is that you're creating?
Well, now it means a little more stress because I've become a little more popular, but it means recognition for the profession as well. So, it all started at the community level, and I was shocked when that day happened. Within Oakville itself, we won a few awards, not only for osteopathic clinic, but for health and wellness. And that was a big deal for us because it means all of a sudden the little osteopath in the corner was receiving accolades that used to be held entitled to other larger practices, other more common practices. And slowly that started to fizzle into a larger fire. And then from my community, I started winning awards in other communities. And yes, as you noted, it happened in 2024. A bit of a shock. My wife had to wake me up to inform me, but I was recognized as the Canadian Choice Award for osteopathy in 2024. And I can say in 2025, for some reason, I think my patients like me, they awarded us the Canadian Top Choice Award in holistic health as a whole. So again, over some other peers and other professions, which is kind of a big deal, not just for myself, but for osteopathy down the road. People are starting to recognize it as a primary choice in healthcare, rather than, again, that off the beaten path that they used to find in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And congratulations on all of that, because now you're no longer just bones in a closet. You're literally out there, taking names and making people recognize. Now, could it be owed to your vast experience, because you went from kinesiology to osteopath and you've worn many hats along the way? How do these sort of diverse experiences now influence your approach to the patient care that you're offering?
I think I just solicit them enough, Prosper, and then they just vote for me anyway. No, I'm kidding. Along the way, I think it does make a big difference, because I was coming from a certain mindset of holistic health as is. So when you're studying exercise science, as I discussed, there's a lot of avenues to it. And I think that really gave me the bones to diversify my practice. That when a patient comes in, I'm not just touching them for money, which is quintessentially what a lot of us do. I'm just manipulating them enough on the table and primarily educating them. And that shows through my patients. So when a patient comes into me, and I think this is becoming more vital in modern day medicine and healthcare, it's not just the treatment. There's an actual follow-up plan. My wife is an educator, and so it's something I'm going to quote from her when she tells parents that, learning doesn't just happen in the classroom, but it also has to follow home. And I think with my background in kinesiology, my background in sports nutrition, my background in strength and conditioning, because I used to do some personal training, that all facets into a practice where the patient can come in with their problem A. They see the professional need B. We can provide treatment there and then, get them feeling better, moving better. But now I can help motivate them to now take that feeling home with them. Because treatment doesn't just happen on my table. It has to happen at home as well. And so all of a sudden you have a patient through, I guess, something I'm doing. It must be either my personality or just my approach in educating them. Now they're becoming more mindful as to A, what to eat, B, how to monitor their medication, C, how to communicate with their own health. And all of a sudden you have a person that starts to feel, move, and act better.
Absolutely. You see, there's a whole difference in what you're saying, because I don't know about the doctors in your area there, but there's some doctors where you walk in, they just look at you from from the top of their eyes, and then they just write whatever they feel like you're saying based on they never really take the time to diagnose something that really works, and it looks like what you're doing is different. Now, I also checked out that you once treated a young girl who couldn't even extend their own knee, and after your intervention she no longer needed a cane. Could you maybe share more about that sort of experience and how that came about?
That was a bit of an emotional experience and unexpected. So that actually happened at a very interesting time when I first started my practice. And I think, like anyone, yes, I work in healthcare, but I also run a business. And so you're always trying to find your place in business on how to become recognized. And so it was actually my colleague, Dr. Richard Gromas, he's a chiropractor that shares an office with me. And I think in his own humble attitude, he stepped out of his office one day. He just called for me to come check what was going on because nothing was working. So, you step in and you're never prepared to see a little girl who quintessentially can't move. And so, as you said, she couldn't extend her knee. Some incident happened. Roughly, it was 3 weeks prior to this, where her knee had entered flexion. So we call this a contracture. And so a contracture is when the muscle contracts. Okay, so you have to remember, muscles pull together. They bring 2 points together. And so the muscle did its job and then just would not let go. So following osteopathy, we look at this as a compensation pattern. And there's something I communicate to everyone that I've learned in my studies, learned through Andrew Taylor still. You have to see how the body compensates. Why has the body adapted this way? Because the body needs to take care of itself. It's not doing something without purpose. So you have this girl, you have the mother, right? She's upset, the father is upset. And then I bumble in coming up from eating lunch, confused at why I'm being called in altogether. So they're looking at me. I'm not like, who's this young guy? We're used to this older doctor here. But you begin assessing, right? You begin looking at the body as a field, as a map. This is how Dr. Andrew Taylor still kind of taught us. I'll reference a story, if you don't mind, before I bring up how we helped her. But Dr. Still, when he first started teaching healthcare, didn't matter what your background was. There was a famous lecture where he brought in a cat. And this poor cat, he grabbed this thing's tail and gave it a really good squeeze. And the cat naturally yelped. And I think scratched him, as you would, right? And he asked the patients, why did the cat scream? His students. And naturally they would say, well, because you yanked on its tail. And his final comment was, well, why do you keep treating the mouth where it screamed? What's happened in healthcare, as you mentioned, with some professionals, now they have a good reason. They are very busy that they kind of look at you really quickly and they write those things down. We call them 3-finger osteopaths because they're always writing something down. I prefer to use all 10 fingers and work on the body. But the point he was saying is we keep treating the symptom. And because we keep treating the symptom, sometimes we miss investigating a little further to the cause. Now, it doesn't always have to be the root cause, but what matters is that this child's knee has locked out, essentially. But let's not just keep working on the knee. There has to be something else going on that led to this. And so following that type of advice took us maybe a good 10 minutes, but we worked on it. We followed the knee. You know that song, knee bones connected to the hip bone, hip bones connected to the... My daughter makes me sing this a lot. She's turning 3 this month. But you start investigating outward. You start following the lines of the body. Okay, knees contracted, knees not moving, knees hurting. But maybe the knee is the victim, not the assailant. Start working the tissues up, up, up. Got to the bottom of her foot. So, you're thinking spine, but actually got to the bottom of her foot. Did some work there. And you can almost feel it like a lock on an opening in a door. The calf released, knee let go. She was able to put weight on her hip again. And we keep that cane in our storage closet now because I told her, you're too young to be walking around with a stick. And so we were able to make the significant change just by being logical and letting the body talk to us, essentially, by following these lessons to learn, look, the area that's ouchy is not always the area that needs help. Maybe it's the area that's just warning you something's wrong. And so that was validating to me. And that's why I apologize that you brought it up, because then I had to share more details to it. That was validating to me because it was in a place where I was questioning, am I in the right field? And I was questioning that not because, am I right to be an osteopath, but am I right to be running a business? Am I right to be running a practice? Because, it's always hard to get those patients coming in through the door. It's hard to win those accolades if nobody notices you. And I think that was a defining moment where I finally noticed, oh, I am in the right place. Oh, I can do this. And I'm able to make that change where even a young girl who should be able to run around and play can again. And so it was a very significant and impactful moment in my practice as a young osteopath.
Oh, absolutely. And congratulations for having done that. I mean, obviously, canes are to be relegated to older people. And now that you're a dad, how does this story actually, really get you to appreciate what you did for this little girl?
Well, as a father, I think you just always want to take care of your child. So I don't question the parents now when they were looking at this fellow with probably salad sticking out of his teeth, walking into the office. But it makes me appreciate the human body, but it makes me appreciate childhood, right? The body's meant to move. I truly have recognized this now. Even though you and I are sitting, we're slowly fidgeting around, we're slowly moving within our seats because our body is trying to solicit a response in us that it's made to move. So to see anyone in that position, when they should be out there being active, it's a big ordeal. Even with the senior population, yes, they have assistance, but the point of that assistance is to help them move at the end of the day. But if we can help postpone that in anybody, I think that's my role, is to postpone the things that scare us, and that's postponing essentially ailments. Now, as a father, seeing my daughter put herself into positions and corners that she is, it frightens me. Also, as an osteopath, it causes me stress, but I think her role in life is to cause me stress in a healthy way. So that's perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you see, a lot of people might be skeptical because the world, I don't know if it's the same for you, but the way that I see it, people are always looking for the pill, something that will just get them, healing faster, get rid of whatever pain there is. And maybe people, from what I know and from what I'm seeing, a lot of people might be skeptical of osteopathy as a practice in and of itself. Well, do you come across any misconceptions that maybe you might want to dispel about, the functionality of the body or what your practice actually enables people to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we live in a time of quick information and quick access, and that's extended into healthcare, right? So it's beautiful that I can take an aspirin and in 20 minutes it thins my blood and all of a sudden I feel better, my back feels better, or I can take ibuprofen or I can take acetaminophen. Now, they have their roles. Medication has its place. Medication has changed the lives for a lot of people, but it doesn't always address the root issue, which is sometimes lifestyle, sometimes injury. And so in a drug-focused society, we still need to take a step back in how we judge the body and how it heals. So when I teach my own students, because I've taken more of a mentoring role now, we always discuss how the physiology of the body, which for those who don't know what physiology is, it just means how the body functions. If you trail it back, all that means is how the body takes care of itself. In osteopathy, you can imagine we study a lot of anatomy. And anatomy is our muscles and our bones and our nerves and our arteries and our organs. But really, anatomy is slow moving physiology. So my muscle is this slow moving functional piece of my body. Now you might be thinking, well, it's not slow moving. When I move my arm, it's pretty quick. But the muscle's always growing. It's always adapting. It's tearing and rehealing itself. It's sending in impulses through the nerves. It's pumping the blood through our system. It actually has a role in that. People forget. It even moves our lymphatics. This is another vessel in our body that you may have heard about. And this is what carries white blood cells and helps remove debris out of the system. Then you have physiology, which now, how I said anatomy is slow moving physiology. Physiology is just really fast moving anatomy. It's just structures again. So we went from the big structure like the muscle and the bone, and now we're going to a small structure like a cell, or an impulse, or a neuron, or an axon, or a dendrite. These are just small structures that do the same thing. Just like the muscle, they damage and tear and they repair. They help pump other things around them. These things are called hormones. They help facilitate health. And so, in facilitating health, we have to go back to drugless systems as well, like osteopathy, like other manual therapies, that look at the body as a whole and say, okay, how do we go from the big thing like the muscle down to the cell? And that's really what holistic health means. People have now fallen into this thing, that holistic health. And I'm bringing this up because, yeah, I can see how osteopathy sounds skeptical, or the story we just shared sounds skeptical. But holistic health just means looking at the whole body. Doesn't mean alternative. It just means looking at the whole body, looking at the whole structure, from the big guy to the little guy. And sometimes this is bypassed in modern medicine because we go straight to the little guy. Here's a quick pill that makes the cell do something a little bit different. Here's a quick pill that gives you a symptomatic response, right? Lowers inflammation or helps tell our brain to turn off that symptom. But kind of like in the story that we just shared, we're just treating maybe a victim. You know, if someone has a headache and goes to their physician, and the physician's rushed on time. I work with a lot of physicians. They really do wish they had more time with patients. They might just give them that painkiller, or they might give them a water pill that takes sodium out of their system because they're like, hey, you know what? You're not very active. You're probably eating a salty diet. Let's just give you something. Maybe that helps with your headache. They're doing the right thing. The difference now, what I look at it is, our body's trying to tell us something. That's why you have that. Our body's trying to tell us something. That's why your knee's locking out. So now in my profession, I have the luxury of time. And I can take more time to not just give you something to help with the symptom, but now we can start mapping out the body, referencing back to compensation. You can see how the body's compensating. And now we can not only help you, but also help your physician break down those extra layers that you guys have not had time for. Because people themselves also need instant relief. You know, some patients will come to me. Some patients go, hey, this hurts. It's causing me depression. I don't like this. I need something now. And that's my job, is to help them get out of the now and look at the bigger picture of what led them to that point of what we call dysfunction. And I think slowly we're seeing, at least here where I am, we can't speak for the rest of the world, but slowly we have more and more medical professionals. And that doesn't just mean doctors. That means nurses, physiotherapists, physiatrists, orthopedic surgeons. That was an interesting conversation I had recently. They're starting to go back with the patient and realize there's more to this than just your ache. Let's have that discussion. And it's a good referral for me in my business now, I've learned anyways. So I'm always appreciative of that. But to skeptical ideas in osteopathy, I just say don't be skeptical of holistic health. Because it's not just osteopaths, there's a lot of other professions out there. But if your question is, should I go see someone who offers holistic services? The answer is yes, because they're just going to have more time for you to break things down where maybe another professional doesn't.
Absolutely. Now, and thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Now, you would also maybe, like you keep talking about how the whole, you treat the whole body rather than, isolated symptoms and things like that. Maybe cars still have that, they have that check engine light, and half of that is just telling you that whatever is going to happen after this is going to cost you. And bodies also have that in the form of maybe a headache, like you were saying, or maybe a knee that locks up and it's a victim or whatever it is. It is a check engine light moment for people like that. So for people to respond to that, what should they maybe look out for? As in, my question is, you're walking around and then maybe something happens, an eyelash falls and then maybe you break a nail or something like that. When should you know you now need to go and see an osteopath instead of just your normal GP?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: if your eyelash falls out, you don't have to come see an osteopath. Maybe just make a wish, hope for something well. But all symptoms are essentially engine lights. Now, not all are serious, right? So if it's something that dissipates quickly, maybe you don't need to bother the physician, right? Maybe then that's when you come see the osteopath. In my practice, like any health practice, we're also always checking for red flags where those are more serious engine problems. And so even in my own practice, and this is where osteopathy, at least in Canada, we are considered primary care practitioners, which means you can actually come to us with a really big problem without a referral. And we're trained enough to go, hey, you know what? I think we need to go for imaging. Hey, I think we need to go talk to your family doctor about a blood test. So you can really come to an osteopath with any issue because we're registered and trained enough to recognize when it is our place to treat you now, or maybe it's best we treat you later after we get some checks. Now, the funny thing about engine lights, and I see patients do this all the time. I have this uncle who works in the auto industry. And he used to drive me around everywhere. He helped me out a lot. But I remember there was a time when we were driving on the highway and there was just this kind of clicking sound coming from his car and he handed me earplugs. And I think he was being funny at the time. I'm like, what are these for? He's like, that's when you hear something expensive, just put them in. Just put them in, ignore it, keep driving. And you know what? Patients do this all the time. And I do it too, right? You don't want it to be something. And you pray that it's not. And most of the time it won't be. But when that symptom's coming up, doesn't matter if it's pain, doesn't matter if it's just dysfunction, maybe something's just not moving the way it should. It's a sign that the body's saying, okay, something's off. We need an oil change, we need a tire rotation, windshield washer fluids out. It could be something bigger. Maybe you need to change a spark plug. Maybe you need a new rotor or brake pads, right? So my primary area why people would come see me is pain with movement or a lack of movement. Because that's a big area I can focus on. Can I do a lot more? Yes. But people at least recognize on a preliminary level, okay, the osteopath guy moves my body around. So let's go see him and get a check there. Other symptoms, they vary, but that's why you have your primary caregiver, your family doctor. And now sometimes they can be old and kooky and they'll think the osteopath's crazy. But at the end of the day, they're a guiding light for you too. New practitioners, as we're seeing, are referring out more than ever before. So just like new osteopaths are trained to send you back to the doctor, new doctors are also being trained to say, hey, you know what? I can give you this for your pain, but it's not going to, my medication's not going to realign your bone. This medication's not going to help you not sit longer in a day. So people are starting to recognize as well in the health community, you need a team of practitioners. You need a complementary health team. Because the more eyes on you means the more chances there are to find out what's going on.
And thank you so much for taking us there, because like you said, people should just come to you whenever they start to feel all sorts, and then you can then maybe obviously use your experience to discern what might be going on with them. I also noticed in your blog, you discussed something called the illusion of knowing. And that sort of happens across, different industries and things of that nature. How do you then maybe stay updated in order to avoid this pitfall in your practice? Because you're looking at so many different people at so many different stages in their medical journey, and you got to know a lot, in order to send them to the right place to start with.
Bias exists anywhere, especially in any community. And bias just means we have a preconceived idea. And I think that's in all of us, right? We sometimes come to our own conclusions without verifying, and especially in healthcare and education, I've learned that's a big risk. There's nothing like the really experienced healthcare practitioner, myself included, where you pop in, something's not working, and then right away, I'm like, you know what, I got that. I know what's going on. That's a fault we have to avoid, is the illusion of knowing. We need to take a step back and always follow some kind of process to almost judge ourselves. And I say that to my patients all the time. After today, give yourself a couple of days to recover. You might feel a little sore, so wait 2 days and then judge me. Contact me. I'm a very honest person. Feel free to judge me, because it might mean I missed something. And this is just something that's become common in all of us, right? We all have our pre-notions that we bring to the table. And that can always be a problem for the patient. So just like I might be confident, that might happen to a patient where they're like, oh yeah, it's just a sore shoulder. I'll pop a Tylenol for that. Little did they know a sore shoulder can be referred pain from the kidneys or the pancreas. All of a sudden, it's a little more concerning. Now, that doesn't mean every time your shoulder's sore, you should go see a doctor, but we have to avoid bias, because it's almost an ego. When we become too confident in ourselves, we end up missing the bigger picture. And this is something I actually discussed recently at a talk with some young chiropractic, osteopathic, and physiotherapy students, that we have to cognitively check ourselves all the time. Now, I wish I could plug myself into a computer and the computer does an optimization and goes, oh, hey, this is what's wrong with you. No. But for the sake of my practice, of myself, of my patient, we always have to be mindful that, okay, I am very confident, but I can still be wrong. And it's in those moments where we catch where we're wrong that we can help the patient succeed more. And we can actually tie that back into the story of the young girl with Dr. Gromas, where great practitioner, great chiropractor, but he had a moment in himself. He's like, you know what, I'm assuming something. Let's have someone else check. And that's all it is. So how do we avoid bias? I look for people who are more experienced than me, and I still ask them for lessons. I'm still an ongoing student. I'm always learning, right? There are osteopaths out there with more years of experience than me, and I lean on them a lot. I still go back to my old professors in my school. I learn from my students. Sometimes my students bring something to me, and I quickly write it down, and I promise them I'll give them credit and we'll take it from them. But that's how we check in on ourselves. It's by not assuming we're at the top. So you mentioned my accolades, and I've had some great cases in my clinic. That's great. But even I have to lean on others, because we have to then check our own bias. Even I have to, in the rare case, tell a patient, you know what? I'm very confident in my skills, but you should actually go back to your family doctor for a second and check in with them too, because I can still be missing something. So I always tell my patients when they walk in, and my wife as well, that I don't know anything. You're the boss. My job is just to help kind of observe and listen, and maybe together we can get on the path to right health.
There's a lot of mindset that has to go into the kind of work that you're doing, because when people show up, half of the time they probably don't know what to expect. And like you then say, wait until a couple of days for you to then actually give a judgment that what we did actually worked. In that process, maybe they're actually telling themselves that this worked, this healed me, and obviously that could also speed up their healing. Could that be an occurrence in that sort of situation?
Always. You know, if a person's coming to me with 30 years of back pain, don't expect to walk out, skipping and hopping, right? Healing can be a non-linear process, and that's hard for people to accept. So we always give them a timeline, because we don't know how their body will actually correspond or compensate with the treatment itself, right? If their whole life their body's compensated a certain way, it's going to take some time to compensate the other way. It's not uncommon that I have patients who see me, let's say, with back pain, and they give me the 2 days that I ask for, and they go, hey, my back pain's gone, but now my hip hurts. Just a rough example. And the first question I'll bring to their attention is, okay, that could have compensated, that's fine, but tell me, did you have hip pain preceding the back pain? And, shockingly, they'll respond, actually, I did. So we just found another pattern of compensation. The hip bone's connected to the backbone. So sometimes healing is a non-linear process because we actually have to work back the pattern that led to the new victim. And so not only is it a way for me to check my own bias, and I always want my patients to be honest with me, because the patient is the best symptomologist, right? I can't feel what you feel, Prosper. You can't feel what I feel. So I need that open line of communication to check in my own bias, but also just to check in with your healing. And that's usually how we have success. We tie that back earlier where we said, I can do what I can on my table, but it has to follow home with you. We have to coach you on how to be healthier. So it's in that process of them going through their little health journey that we can actually fix the problem and get them going again.
Cool. Now, Stefan, for those considering osteopathic treatment, what should they expect during their first visit at Level Osteopathy? It looks like they need to bring a notebook from the sound of it all.
No, I always tell them there's no homework. They can forget everything when they leave. But when you're coming in for treatments, just be yourself. I'm a very genuine person. Be yourself and be honest, right? So thankfully, I've learned to use automated systems. So as long as you fill out the health forms, we'll start the discussion. Bring yourself, bring a comfortable pair of clothes. And then what you can expect is a very honest conversation very quickly. I'm pretty good at breaking the ice. And we can begin to break down their body. So expect to just look at how you move, how you walk, how you sit, how you stand. Expect to take some deep breaths. Expect for an inappropriate, sarcastic comment or two along the way once I judge your character. And just be relaxed, because in osteopathic treatment, this is the biggest misconception. People are expecting pain. That's what they're used to. They're expecting me to work on an area that's very tender, very sensitive. They're expecting me to force a joint or crack something. Osteopathy is not about that. We actually work very smooth and gentle. I don't know if you've ever been hit in the face, Prosper, but most people don't like it. Yeah. People don't respond to it well. So when working with an osteopath, when even working with myself at Level Osteopathy, you have to expect actually a very smooth, gentle treatment. It's a quiet treatment because we're trying to not force anything into place. We're trying to guide it into place. Something I always tell patients as well is, where some people work against the body for a reason, I'm trying to work with the body. So it's going to be a very gentle process because I need your body to respond appropriately and calmly as well. And then you let me know and judge me afterward how it goes.
It's very opposite to those TikTok wellness doctors that put microphones in places and then they just do it for the,
Yeah, I'm sent that all the time. It gives me a good laugh. I think people look for that too. I think they look for that.
It's the placebo effect to it. Then they feel like something has been done, because if you just come in and you tell my muscles to relax, and then I'll just be like, I don't know what the doctor did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it kind of goes back to the drug thing, right? If people want a quick medication,
yeah,
sometimes even with hands-on therapy, they just want that sensation of a quick fix. So it's hard for them, if I work on something over 20 minutes, okay, is he actually doing something where the last guy just popped it back in? But again, the results will follow themselves, right? Longer term health, that's what we want.
Great stuff. And if you're watching this and you're in the Oakville area and seeking holistic approach to health, reach out to Stefan at Level Osteopathy. I will put all the links in the show notes there. And just really start your journey towards a healthier existence. But Stefan, now that you've brought us into your world, and obviously you did mention that this is a long-term sort of game and process and things of that nature. What's next? What are you working on that we can be excited about, that now that we know what it is that you're doing?
Well, people can expect more and more content online, be it short form videos, because people seem to love microlearning, or longer form topics. Level Osteopathy will be growing, so soon we'll be at a point with a larger team. But what people can look forward to really is our blog. So you've mentioned it as well. We're taking in more and more writing and offering more and more free content. So for people in or outside of the Oakville, Ontario area, you can always actually come across our content and reach out to us at www.levelosteopathy.com, because health doesn't just stay in the office, it extends outward. So for anyone who has an interest, you'll always be able to find me and my content and my research there to kind of keep in check and find out what can be working for you no matter where you are across the world.
Absolutely. Now, Stefan, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. It's quite an enlightening episode. And I mean, your journey from academic curiosity to now holistic healing really serves as a testament to the power of, first of all, passion, empathy, and continuous learning. So thank you so much for all you're doing, helping people. And I literally feel like you're giving people back to themselves.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because if somebody has been stuck, maybe back pain or whatever it is, and they're not free to do or move, you're literally giving them that freedom of using their body to experience the world.
Thank you, because it was something that was given to me as well. So if I can help share that relief with anyone else, yeah, let's get back out there.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching, if today's conversation resonated with you, obviously consider sharing this episode with someone who might benefit from Stefan's insights. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe for more transformative stories that inspire and inform. And I encourage you to stay tuned, because in our next episode, we're going to be exploring ideas that will actually help you lead a happier and more fulfilling life. Until then, take care and keep striving for prosperity in all areas of your life. Bye for now.